If you're feeling stumped by the SAT math section, whether it's polynomials or linear equations or nonlinear equations, I'm here to help. My name is Melissa. I'm with PrepScholar, which is a leading test prep website just full of articles about everything you can imagine with regard to college admissions, test prep for SAT and ACT, even drawing ideas. Like, we really have it all. We also offer a customized SAT prep program, which is geared to your unique needs. So rather than trying to do a one-size-fits-all approach to test preparation, our program actually adapts to the things you need to study rather than just trying to do it all. And you can learn more about our SAT prep program down in the description below. While you're down there, you might consider also subscribing to our channel if you like this video or any of the content we've been putting out recently. If you have any questions about SAT prep or ACT prep or really anything relating to college admissions, please leave me a comment down below. I would love to help you out, and all of your feedback is going to help me make decisions about what I'm going to be covering in future videos. So if you take a moment to leave me a comment, I'll know that that's something that needs to be addressed. So before we get into studying strategies, the first thing I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the changes to the SAT, specifically the changes to the SAT math section. In the past, I've done a video on some of the changes that affect SAT vocabulary, which you can find by clicking a link right up there. But today we're going to focus specifically on math. So when the SAT was revamped in 2016, the biggest change to the math section was that it was actually split into two sections. One section in which you can use a calculator and one section in which you cannot. So the no calculator section is going to be the shorter one at about 25 minutes long. The with calculator section is going to be about 55 minutes long, making for a total math investment of about 80 minutes. When you break that down by how many questions there are, you're going to have about 1 minute and 15 seconds to solve each no calculator problem, and about 1 minute and 26 seconds on each calculator problem. Now, obviously, that's not a lot of time. That means that you're going to be needing to do a lot of practice tests so that you can get a sense of where you need to improve, how much time you're taking, so that you can be quicker and more adept at the problems in the future. So the College Board organizes the questions into 3 different categories. The first one being Heart of Algebra, the second being Passport to Advanced Math, and the third being Problem Solving and Data Analysis. I don't know why the third one doesn't have a creative name like the first two, but that's just how it is. So the first section, Heart of Algebra, is going to cover, as you might expect, the basics of algebra, things like linear equations, inequalities, functions, and graphs. The second category, Passport to Advanced Math, covers nonlinear expressions, and the third section, Problem Solving and Data Analysis, covers rates, ratios, percentages, and data from graphs and tables. So now that we have a basic idea of the different categories that you'll be studying for on the SAT, let's get into some kind of general math studying tips. So tip number 1 is going to be to focus your attention. Between all 3 sections, that's a lot of math to cover. You're not just looking at one specific type of math. You're looking at, 3 distinct sections, each of which have several subsections within them, things like linear equations, nonlinear equations, etc., etc. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to find out where your weak points are and address those weak points. It's really important to not just take practice tests over and over again, just assuming that you'll get better, because when you do that, you're not accounting for the things that you really need to work on. Instead, you're taking this very broad approach, which can end up with you not really learning anything. It can also be really intimidating to try to study for the entire SAT rather than trying to focus on the things that you need work on. So what you can do to amend this is to take practice tests, figure out where you're going wrong, and then spend some time honing in on those areas that you go wrong. So say inequalities are not a strong suit for you. You're struggling with the signs, you can't remember which one is which. So instead of taking a practice SAT again and hoping that you do better this time, instead maybe you take a week off and you just brush up on inequalities. You spend all your time going, okay, here's what I need to work on, so this is what I'm going to work on this week. Then, once you feel like you've made some progress in that skill, then you can take another practice test. And when you take another practice test, you can evaluate, did my ability to do inequalities go up? Did it stay the same? Did it go down? And then you can address things from there. That way that you're pinpointing exactly what went wrong so that you can fix that thing, rather than saying, it's the whole SAT, I don't know what's going wrong. Focus your attention, you're gonna have a much easier time of studying. So the second major tip I have for you is going to be to plug in values. And what this means is that when you're presented with an equation that has variables and the answers have possible substitutions for those variables, instead of trying to solve the equation itself, you can plug in the variables, and a lot of times that'll be faster. If the equation is very complex or you're not sure where to begin, just plug in the variables. And I have an example of that for you right here. So this is a problem I pulled from an SAT practice test. And this is one from the no calculator section, so this is something you might actually run into. One of the things to look at here is that we could probably solve this without just plugging in values, but we can do it a lot faster if we just try some values. So the problem is, if x minus 1 over 3 equals k, and k equals 3, what is the value of x? So we've got a variable here that we need to find a value for, and luckily we have a whole bunch of variables right here that we can work with. So let's just get started. We'll do if x, I don't know why I'm rewriting. Well, I already did it. So if x minus 1 over 3 equals k, and k equals 3, then we can just rewrite that as x over 1 equals 3. So if we plug in 2, then we already know that 2 minus 1 is going to end up with a fraction, so it's not 2. 4 minus 1 is 3. 3 divided by 3 does not equal 3, it equals 1, because 3/3, 3 divided by 3 is 1. 3/3 is equal to 1, so it's not 4. 9 minus 1 equals 8. 8 is not divisible by 3. If we know our 3 times tables, we know that. So it's not 9, which brings us to 10. We always want to double check our work. So 10 minus 1 divided by 3 is equal to 3. 10 minus 1 is 9 divided by 3 equals 3. 9 divided by 3 is in fact 3, which means that 10 is our answer. So we went through that a lot faster than if we were to guess and check, or if we were to use some other way of solving the problem. It's generally with stuff like this, when you have just one variable that needs substitution, or even if you had 2 variables, it's a lot faster to just substitute them in rather than to try to solve it on its own. And to top it off, luckily on this one, it was pretty obvious that none of these were going to work, so that one went pretty fast. But yeah, that's the very simple way of just substituting in a value rather than trying to solve for it on its own. That'll save you a bunch of time, and especially if you don't try to try every problem, because it probably wasn't going to be 2. So my third and last major tip is to try again before reading the explanation. And I know this may sound counterintuitive because you got a question wrong, and so the explanation is right there, so why wouldn't you read it? It seems like that would be the right move because you want to know exactly what you got wrong so you don't do it again next time. However, I would like to encourage you to try to solve the problem again before reading the explanation. And there's a couple reasons for this. If you solve the problem again and you end up with the same answer that you did before, or you end up with a different incorrect answer, that's going to tell you that it wasn't just a small mistake, it was something probably wrong with your understanding of the material. And that means it's time to go back and study that material again. Now, if you do the problem again and you get the correct answer, that's most likely going to tell you that you made a minor mistake, and so you can go back through your original work, always save your work. You can go back through your original work and pinpoint where you made the mistake, and that tells you that next time you do a problem like this, you're going to be more aware of where you messed up last time, so you're less likely to repeat the mistake the second time, or the third time, or the fourth time, and so on and so on and so forth. The purpose of not reading the explanation is to essentially teach yourself the problem. You're getting more experience not just by solving it again, but by understanding where you went wrong, not because the explanation gave it to you, but because you solved the problem and you figured it out. A lot of times, reading an explanation is really easy to forget. Like, you can read through an explanation and then you go to do the problem and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. This is not uncommon. A lot of times it's very hard to learn just from reading an explanation. So solving the problem again and again and again, if necessary, is going to teach you how to do it right, because you're teaching yourself to do it. You're not relying on an outside explanation that may not be quite addressing your specific needs. That's not to say you shouldn't ever read the explanation. You definitely should, but that rather you should take some time to try to teach it to yourself also. That's going to do it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me as always. The SAT math section can be very confusing, especially if you're not a math expert, but hopefully these tips are going to help you have an easier time working through the parts that you're struggling with and give you a faster speed and a higher score. The most important thing that you can do is devote time to not just studying, but studying well. And that means having strategies in mind, not just repeating the same processes over and over in the hopes things will change. You want to be devoting time to figuring out how you learn best and then learning in that manner. Down in the description, we have a whole bunch of guides to SAT math, including different studying strategies that may help you, different tips for getting the most out of this section and getting the most out of your time, as well, of course, as links to our SAT prep program, which again is geared specifically to your needs rather than to the needs of the general public. Instead, it's going to hone in on the areas that you struggle and then craft a program dedicated to helping you not struggle in those areas anymore. So if you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to this channel for the latest updates on everything we're doing at PrepScholar TV, and check out our other videos for more test prep information. And please consider leaving me a comment down below if you have specific questions or topics that you'd like to see in future videos, because I'd love to hear about them. That's it for this week, and happy prepping!